Hey Tim, just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things here in regards to this question, and just I was hoping to get a little feedback as to whether I'm heading down the right track here. So I just kind of thought I'd verbally walk you through this a little bit, and kind of give you my thought process. So if we're going to tighten a screwdriver with our right hand, obviously we're going to come from a position of pronation to supination. And so if I start at the most distal radial ulnar joint, that's where we're going to have our most movement. Now, the pronator quadratus is located there, but in that case, we won't be using that for our actual action of tightening the bolt with a screwdriver. So we're going to go ahead and move up to the supinator, which is going to be located a little bit more proximally on the radius. However, I think most people will say that that muscle group is engaged, but because of the fact that the biceps is engaged, I do remember the book stating something about that the supinator is far less engaged when we have the biceps involved. So I think the biceps will be the primary supinator here, and that the supinator will play a much more minor role with that group being in play. Now, the brachioradialis will also play a role in the forearm here, to my understanding, when we're moving from that neutral position to supination. So if we were tightening the bolt, we would come from a position of pronation to a neutral grip, and then to supination at that point. And so the brachioradialis would kick in from that neutral grip to the point of supination. So I think those are the primary muscles going to be involved there in the supination action for the forearm. Now the elbow, I think we're going to have a multitude of muscles here. Of course, the biceps brachii will cause flexion of the elbow when we are supinating, right? Because the biceps is contracting at that point. And the brachioradialis is also a flexor as well. And finally, the brachialis is a true flexor, as that is located strictly on the ulna, and the insertion is strictly on the ulna, and so we're not having a lot of that radius movement, and we know that the ulna is relatively stationary compared to that of the radius with its movements. So we're going to have flexion from the biceps, the brachialis, and the radiobrachialis as well, because we will, in that supination process, have some of that flexion, and that's largely due to the biceps playing both roles. So again, that's going to be the primary muscle there, to my understanding thus far. The next thing that we are going to be looking at is now action of the humerus, specifically on the shoulder joint. Now, I don't think there will actually be shoulder flexion here, which the biceps will cause that, supposedly. I think it's, to my understanding, it's a kind of a weak flexor of the shoulder, but I don't think we're going to have a whole lot of activity in that regard. The biggest aspect that I see is, like we were talking yesterday, maybe a little bit of abduction, because of that long head of the biceps location. We could be pulling the humerus laterally a little bit as the muscle itself shortens. So that is a possible option for the shoulder joint there. The other thing that I am thinking about with the joint itself is external rotation, because when we do perform that supination, we are going to rotate our humerus away from our body. So that would be external rotation at that point. Let's see here. And I believe that might be it for those shoulder joint movements. So I think it would be those two. I don't think we're seeing the flexion here, that shoulder flexion here. In regards to the muscles that are causing external rotation for the joint specifically, we're going to be thinking about some of the rotator cuff muscles, but because those are smaller, the one I have in mind most right now is going to be the rear delt. That will be contributing to that external rotation. Let's see, what else do we got here? And then there's some of those smaller rotator cuff muscles like the teres minor and infraspinatus. Those would be causing some external rotation. I'm trying to remember if there would be anything else for the joint itself. I don't think so off the top of my head. If we move on to the shoulder girdle now, we're going to be looking at scapular adduction, which is part of the process of external rotation. I can definitely palpate the rhomboid muscles as well as the middle traps are going to be big in pulling that scapula in an adduction motion. And so I was thinking about the rhomboids and traps being the largest movers of the shoulder girdle. Anything else that I can think of at this moment? The upper traps don't contribute to that adduction, that scapular adduction, to my understanding. At least that's not what the book has as part of the action. So I believe it's the middle traps and the lower traps that are contributing to that scapular adduction. So those are really kind of the muscles that I am thinking about at the moment for this movement. Hopefully I'm on the right track here. Any feedback would be appreciated. Thank you again, Tim. Really appreciate your time.